Hey everyone, so we're back today with another process video. This time I'm going to be doing this drawing of a wizard, very Gandalf-like wizard, and he's, I guess, in a bit of a snowy landscape like a mountain pass. So I'm going to zoom in and get started, but first I am working on this is watercolor paper, 140-pound watercolor paper. I believe it's Canson brand. And the ink I'm using is super black. And I'll be using my usual Hyro 41 and Hunt 101 nibs on this one. I'm going to start out with the Hunt 101. I'm just going to clean it a little bit here because it's got some ink on it. Some dried ink. Okay, let's get going. Let me zoom in on the wizard. And we'll start off with him. I do like to generally start with the center of focus in a drawing. Like, once I get the center of focus done, like if there's a person in the drawing, I'll do the person first. Just because for me, the success or failure of the piece rides on that person being done the way that I want it to be. Landscape, I can fudge that, but the person has to, for me anyway, look just right. And there's our nice pointy hat. And I'm going to put just a few lines in here to indicate hair. But otherwise, we're just going to make this shadowed area under the brim of his hat more or less just dark. A little bit of a profile there with the nose. And same thing with the face. Get the beard blowing out in the wind. Something like that. And the face is going to be in shadow. Just like that. Sometimes can be just a bit tricky with the dip pen getting these really thin lines. You need a really light touch to get that with the dip pen, but you know what? You could do the same thing that I'm doing here with a micron as well, or any other sort of technical pen, and achieve the same or similar result. Dip pens are just my particular pen of choice. Now for the brim of his hat, I'm gonna kind of radiate these lines rather than just going straight across with them in the same direction as this kind of hat band that I have here. I'm just going to radiate them out, and that gives a little impression of the circular nature of the hat, if that makes any sense. It's also creating some differentiation between the brim of his hat and this hat band. So if I were to run the lines this way, just like I have in the hat band would get lost. So this is just a really simple, clean way of identifying that, creating a break and identifying that difference. It's like so. And there's a little crease in his hat right here. I'm gonna deepen this line, make a little shadow there. Now these lines, I think I'm gonna run those this way. Ran out of ink there. And I'm going to, let's see, up here we'll do this. You know, like I always say, there's really no right or wrong way to do this. All I'm doing is kind of explaining the logic behind why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, but that doesn't mean that this is the only way that you could do it. You could definitely run those lines this way if you wanted to, and it would just have a slightly different look, but there would be nothing wrong with that look. I'm keeping the top portion of the hat lighter just to indicate that there's a little bit of a highlight there. Doesn't take much. So there's our head and hat and flowing beard. Here we have the hood of his cloak, kind of blowing back in the wind. Just a nice irregular shape here. This area of the cloak is going to be in shadow underneath the hood. And the bottom portion of the hood as well is going to be in shadow. One of the reasons that I have this drawing on the watercolor paper is that it's a little more rigid and it's easy to turn for purposes of this video. So, you know, if I were not videoing this, I could easily get away with just using like 90-pound sketch paper that I usually use, multimedia paper. A few darker lines in there just to indicate folds in the hood. And some shadow lines here. Just going to darken up a few areas in the beard. As I ink, I'm always going back over the areas that I've already inked. As I always say, there's no part of a drawing that's safe from me while I'm working on it. I'm always going back, touching things up, adding little things. see. So he's got this bag slung over his shoulder. And there's some straps kind of bundling it together. And the profile of this bag is going to kind of bunch out where it's not bundled. His sleeve is going to be blowing out past this bundle. So I drew the edge of that sleeve just to block that off. And the shoulder strap is going to go up like that. That's going to kind of disappear in the shadowed area here. A lot of this is going to be in shadow, as I mentioned earlier. Just leave a couple little gaps there to indicate that there is that flowing fabric in there. A little bit of a ragged edge on his sleeve. A little bit of realism there. And you know what, let's do a little patch on his cloak, maybe a couple patches, just for fun. I'm just going to have a little bit of a trim on his sleeve as well. There's not really a specific reason why I'm drawing the lines like this. I just thought it would look cool. Kind of radiating them in a similar fashion as I did here on the brim of the hat. When you're working with lines, a lot of times it's, how can I make this interesting? So there's kind of what makes sense and what would look visually interesting. I think I'm going to leave this part light as well, also indicating a highlight here. Finer lines on that patch. This one I think I'll leave white. Some faint lines on this trim to indicate it's kind of a lighter fabric different kind of material. All right, and then there's the bag here. We're going to do the bag with heavier lines. So I'm just going to make those lines nice and thick. Especially toward the bottom. And I'm curving them. Similar, not the same curve, but a similar curve to the bottom, indicating that it's bundled. That there's a bulge there. And I think I'll leave the top of the bag kind of lighter as well, or top of the bundle. And there's a little bit of a deeper shadow along the edge of the strap too, since it's pushing that bundle in. So there's going to be a little bit of a dark spot there where it's creased in. It also helps to define the strap by creating a shadow there next to it. And remember, this end of his bundle is behind his sleeve.